I'm Susan, a 50-year-old wife who juggles home duties and a job at a big company. Tom, my husband, promised to share the load when he proposed. 5 years ago, I married Tom, hoping for a lifetime of happiness, but soon after, he changed completely. When we first met, Tom was a perfect gentleman. We hit it off at a party, chatting away happily. He even asked to meet up alone next time, leaving me feeling excited for more. When we started dating, I learned he had a son named Mike from his previous marriage. Mike was in 5th grade then, and I had dinner with him a few times. He was a bright and nice kid, just like his father. A year later, Tom proposed to me, and I decided to open up to him. I work part-time and live with my parents, I confessed. Actually, the company I joined right out of college was a nightmare, and it wrecked my health. Is that so? He said. It was tough, even quitting. I don't think I can work long hours anymore. Tom smiled kindly. Just stay at home without overdoing it. Look, I work for a big corporation. I'll work for both of us. No worries. Comforted by his words, I accepted his proposal. I truly thought I had found a good man and looked forward to a happy married life. Little did I know, in less than 6 months, I'd face utter despair. As we got used to living as a family of 3, Tom and Mike's behavior took a drastic turn. They started criticizing and mocking everything I said or did. Mom's beaten again. What about my lunch? One morning, Mike came to my bedroom, frowning in displeasure. I had fallen ill after participating in a community event at a local church the day before. It was an unseasonably hot day and I wasn't feeling well, so I had asked Tom to help, but he refused with an annoyed look. Must be nice to be a stay-at-home mom. You can slack off all year, he said. It's my rare day off, let me rest. I understand pushing myself to attend had resulted in being unable to get up the next morning. I'm sorry, Mike. I couldn't prepare your lunch, so please buy something from Walmart, I said, handing him the money. Mike grumbled discontentedly. Mom, can't you at least make a decent lunch? You're always taking shortcuts with frozen stuff or leftovers from dinner. His words stung me deeply. Don't blame your mom, Mike, Tom chimed in passing by in the hallway with a half-smirk. With the effort she's saving on lunch, I bet dinner is going to be extravagant, all right? Should I expect something fancy, like roast beef or maybe crab and salmon roe shipped directly from Maine? I'm looking forward to it. As a full-time housewife, you've got plenty of time to spare for dinner, right? You're not sleeping all afternoon, I hope. And make sure to do the house cleaning thoroughly, no slacking off. Both of them chuckled at my exhausted state, threw out their unreasonable lines, and left. There's no way I can prepare such a luxurious meal lying in bed. I stared at the ceiling and let out a heavy sigh. The reason is simple. Tom is incredibly stingy. Despite being a department head in a major corporation and earning a substantial salary, the allowance he gives me is ridiculously meager. It's my salary, so why should I let my wife manage it? He argued. After we got married, I didn't oppose him quietly complying. I believed that as long as the household finances were managed properly, it didn't matter who was in charge. Then Tom started spending money recklessly. It's necessary for work. Social drinking is a business expense. It's essential, he'd say. While he splurges on expensive clothes and watches for himself, he makes a fuss even if I spend $1 on a snack, insisting that a housewife doesn't need pocket money. I have to report to Tom and get permission for every expense, whether it's a trip to the salon or buying clothes. One pair of jeans should be enough, right? You're buying another one. I need a warm one for winter. Fine, but buy it cheap. And I want to get a haircut. Can I go to the salon every 2 months to maintain my hairstyle? Huh? What's the point of you dressing up? Keep your long hair as it is. Then you only need a haircut every 6 months. I won't allow it. So I'm only allowed to buy cheap makeup from dollar stores. Even when I plead to change to better products because my skin is getting rough, he doesn't listen. Furthermore, the household budget he gives me is of the average. No wonder our nutrition is unbalanced. When I complained, Tom just shrugged it off. They managed with this amount on that TV budgeting show, but that lady's family owned a farm, and she got vegetables and rice from them. It's impossible with the high cost of living here. Managing that is your job, isn't it? I was frustrated not just by his stinginess with the household budget, but also by his attitude towards my father's funeral contribution when my father, who had been ill, passed away. Tom blatantly showed his reluctance. We don't need to give a funeral contribution, right? Anyone attending the funeral other than the immediate family gives a contribution. Then use your savings. I'm not involved, he said to me, tears streaming and preparing for the funeral in my mourning clothes. His complete lack of consideration for me infuriated me. I don't intend to ask for your contribution, so don't worry. Good, but wait, do Mike and I really have to go? It's going to ruin our long weekend. Such a drag, really, Dad. I was planning to play a new video game. Though they complained, I never doubted they would attend. However, when Tom and Mike finally showed up late, they didn't greet my mother or relatives. My exhausted mother didn't have the energy to criticize them, but my relatives were furious. What's Tom thinking? It's too cold-hearted for his father-in-law's funeral, and Mike, after receiving so many gifts and money from your father. I apologized profusely to my relatives, feeling my affection for them rapidly cooling. Tom, in his stylish suits, and Mike, attending a prestigious private university, were popular in the neighborhood as a handsome father-son duo. But at home, they did nothing but spew verbal abuse at me. Instead of coming straight home after work or school, they'd wander around, returning with the scent of lipstick and perfume. While they did whatever they pleased, they treated me like a maid, demanding luxurious meals despite the meager food budget. Recently, when I served dishes made with chicken or pork, Mike and Tom would glare at me disdainfully and lash out. Don't you want to serve a good meal to a husband who's been working all day? If I get sick eating this poor man's food, how are you going to take responsibility? Call yourself a mother. I can make tasty meals even with chicken or pork. And if you're picky about eating vegetables and fish, you'll end up ruining your health. We're saying we'd eat it if it was high in seafood. Stop yapping. If you can't satisfy us with your cooking, I don't need to be lectured by you. They used to eat despite complaining, but recently they've started leaving food untouched. Yet if I don't cook, they berate me for slacking off as a wife. It's such a waste, so I end up eating it for breakfast or lunch the next day, wondering who I'm cooking for as tears well up in my eyes. As for their meals, they get by with store-bought lunches, ramen noodles, and snack foods. Eventually, Tom was diagnosed as pre-diabetic during a company health check, and Mike started gaining weight. It was a predictable outcome. Then they lashed out at me. How dare you as a wife make your husband and son sick? We don't need a useless woman like you. Let's get a divorce then. I agree readily, which took them by surprise. Are you okay with that? Being jobless, you've been living off me. How will you survive now? Don't worry about me. I'll sign the divorce papers later and send them to you. Just leave my stuff until the movers come to pick it up. Nobody is going to take your junk, Tom sneered. Ah, you'll regret leaving a handsome, high-earning guy like me. You won't find another kind husband who'd let you be a housewife with 3 meals and naps, right? You've been living in luxury off Dad's money. You'll struggle now. While I packed my clothes in a suitcase, Tom and Mike kept ranting. I envied how highly Tom thought of himself during our dating days. This overconfidence seemed shining and confident. You're going back to your mom's, right? Say hi to her. Living on her pension, you too will be living the poor life. "Hey, Mike, I bet they'll end up on welfare." Tom's prediction made Mike laugh out loud. "You already reek of poverty. Combined with Grandma, they'll be the ultimate pair." The recent funeral was so stingy it felt like poverty was seeping in. I thought the same. Call it a family funeral or poor man's funeral. I want a grand event. Mike got it, Dad, but for us, poverty's like a different world, with Dad in a major corporation and me at a prestigious university. I was boiling with anger at their audacity, but realized it was pointless to react and let it all slide. Returning home, I confided in my mom, who lowered her voice. I sensed something was off with Tom and Mike at the funeral, but I didn't want to intrude too much into my daughter's family. Plus, with your father's illness, I know you couldn't speak up. "I'm sorry for suddenly showing up." "It's fine. I've been lonely without someone to talk to." "Why don't you stay here?" "Thanks, but once I get my job on track, I'm planning to move to an apartment." While I appreciated my mom's concern, living together might make me too dependent. Living nearby and visiting occasionally seemed the right balance. Tom and Mike mocked me for being jobless, but in reality, I'd been working from home. It all started with my budget cooking blog receiving many positive comments. I boldly launched a cooking website, which quickly gained a readership and became popular online. Then an editor from a major publishing house approached me, and now I'm slowly preparing to publish a cookbook. Thanks to this, I've been too busy to dwell on the divorce, and days flew by. One day, my phone rang incessantly. Pausing from stir-frying ingredients, I answered, "Hello." "Hey, what's this about alimony?" I sighed, expecting this topic. "You and Mike hurled enough abuse at me, didn't you?" "Oh," I thought. "Never mind." Relief in his voice, Tom abruptly continued, "I haven't cheated on you or anything." Wait, did you record our verbal abuse? Your memory alone won't cut it. I've noted everything in a journal in detail. Try filing for alimony then. Poor people always talk about money. Let's see if you can actually get it. Tom snapped and hung up the phone. After finishing cooking, I went to a private investigator and requested an investigation into Tom's behavior. Soon, his affair with a coworker was uncovered. The day after I sent photos and the investigation report to his company, Tom called me again. "You're so low, exposing it to my company. My furious manager reported it to the higher-ups, and now I'm fired." "Oh, wasn't the woman his daughter? You should have known better than to have an affair, given how strict they are about such matters." I chuckled. "But you must be fine, right? You were so stingy with living expenses, you must have plenty of savings." "I bet you and Mike are living it up." Mike moved into a dorm for his college this spring because commuting was tough. "Damn, with the prepaid dorm fees and the mortgage, it's a lot. My savings got drained by that woman. She was two-timing me with a younger guy." Sounds tough, but that's none of my business. "Oh, and about my alimony plus half the value of the apartment for property division, please transfer it to my account once the claim arrives." Tom was ranting over the phone, but I hung up without bothering. A few days later, while returning from shopping downtown, I bumped into Mike, dressed in flashy fashion with multiple piercings and blonde hair. He was noticeable from afar. Spotting me, he raised his hand in greeting. "Hey, I heard you're on welfare now. I was surprised." "What? You're mistaking me for someone else," Mike said with a twisted smile. "Any jobless old lady like you would end up there. If you had just obeyed Dad and me, you could still be living comfortably." "It's pathetic," I retorted. "Receiving welfare is a citizen's right. We could all need it someday due to illness or accidents. It's wrong to look down on it." Yeah, so you're getting it too, huh?" Ignoring his smirk, Mike pointed his finger at me. "Listen, you and I are done. Don't come begging to me. I won't lend you a penny. Remember that." Just as I was about to retort, he turned his back and disappeared into the crowd. I bowed my head and trembled, my shoulders feeling the stares of passers-by. I couldn't help it. The situation was too absurd, and I couldn't suppress my laughter. Poor thing, he knows nothing. I'm curious to see his reaction when he finds out the truth. A few days later, wake up, I found a ridiculous number of missed calls from Mike. Reluctantly calling back, he yelled furiously, "You tricked me." "What are you talking about?" "I heard from my cousin you got 3 luxury condos from Grandpa's inheritance and are living comfortably. Hiding that during the divorce is low. My personal assets. Why should I tell you or Tom? It's marital property. You should have divided it with Dad, too. Too bad. It became mine after the divorce proceedings, so I can't give it to Tom. I had known it was mine by my father's will, but I delayed the proceedings to avoid sharing with Tom. Mike then raged, 'You're rich and still getting welfare.' I'm reporting you to the authorities right now. Feel free. The one getting it is Tom, though." Mike fell silent. "What?" "I told you it's not me. Are you listening? I explained it like talking to a child. To be honest, even without the inheritance, I can live well. I have income from my cooking website and book sales, which I started secretly. But Tom spent all his money on his affair and has many debts after being fired. He has no income. Mike, are you there? Dad's on welfare." "No way." I pulled the phone away from my ear as Mike screamed. Waiting for him to calm down, I continued the conversation. "You really haven't heard, have you? Tom's too proud to tell his son. A relative who Tom asked for money told me that he was evicted for not paying his apartment rent, and now he's unemployed, holed up in a rundown apartment. Holed up? Are you cold? After all Dad did for you, don't you feel any gratitude? You have money. You should give it to him." "Why should I?" "Ever since we got married, it's been nothing but unpleasant." "I don't feel indebted to him," I responded coolly. "If you're so concerned, why don't you lend him money? You have a job." "I don't have any savings. The money from my job, well, it goes to hanging out with friends." Mike's tone faltered and I smirked. "You've been partying quite lavishly as a student. You shouldn't be borrowing money to go to clubs. How did you know that?" "I saw you across the street the other day right after we parted. You met up with a club hostess and went into a luxury store. Plus, I found a club membership card at home, and using my credit card without permission is out of the question." Mike stumbled over his words, trembling. "It's unfair. You got all those fancy condos from Grandpa and Dad, and I got nothing. This is discrimination." Okay. The bill for the credit card is coming soon, so make sure you pay it." The call ended before I finished speaking. I sighed and ended the call as well. I thought it was over, but a few months later, Tom and Mike showed up unannounced at my parents' house. When the doorbell rang persistently, I answered the intercom to find them there. Expecting they had come to borrow money, I let them into the house to avoid causing a scene outside. Tom and Mike's appearance had drastically changed from their once stylish looks to worn shirts and dirty pants. Their eyes lacked vitality and they looked haggard, yet they still had the energy to be sarcastic. Upon entering the living room, Tom looked around and sneered, "Same old shabby house. Why don't you sell those condos and rebuild this place? Do something nice for your mother, living on a meager pension. This is the house of Dad's memories, so it's fine as is. More importantly, when are you two going to pay back the money? You're past the deadline." Tom lifted his chin and arrogantly proposed, "Susan, I'll forgive you now. So let's remarry. What you started, a cooking site, right? If you can handle the housework perfectly, I'll even let you work. So come back. Being kind enough to forgive a wife who abandoned her husband and child. Dad's generous. So, Mom, why don't you live with Dad again? It must be insecure for two women living alone. I was speechless, then rage surged within me. Don't you dare mock me. How much more do you need to ridicule me before you're satisfied? I yelled at Tom and Mike, who widened their eyes in shock. After treating me like a housemaid, hurling abuse at me, and not giving me enough for living expenses, you now want me back because I inherited the condos. That's absurd. What, you plan to abandon us? Rich people really are stingy, knowing we're struggling for money yet still demanding payment. You're heartless. You were poor just a while ago. Don't get too full of yourself. As we were arguing, my mother returned from shopping. Immediately, Tom and Mike started fawning over her. Please lend us some money. We'll probably pay it back. And isn't it unfair that only Susan got her dad's inheritance? Give me one of those condos, too. Grandma, long time no see. How have you been? Please persuade Mom to remarry Dad. He doesn't want a divorce, but Mom's being stubborn. Surprised by Tom and Mike's sudden flattery, my mother's expression changed. After hearing their words, she put down her shopping bag on the refrigerator's floor and took a deep breath. So shameless, both of you. What do you mean, learn some shame? She exclaimed loudly. Tom and Mike were taken aback, understandably confused, as my mother usually spoke softly. She glared sharply at them and sternly said, I've heard everything about the divorce from Susan. How dare you show up here like this? Oh, come on, Susan's exaggerating. You should hear our side. Yeah, Grandma, Mom tends to lie quite a bit. I remember very well how you both behaved at my husband's funeral. My mother interrupted, continuing in a stern tone. You arrived late, didn't greet me or the relatives, and just yawned throughout the service. You left before the coffin was sent off. After behaving like that, you have the nerve to ask for his inheritance. She drove Tom and Mike to the entrance, glaring fiercely at them. We're strangers now. Don't you ever come here again. If you do, I'll call the police. She pushed them out, still in their socks, threw their shoes at their feet, and locked the door immediately. Eventually, Tom, who had been reluctant to pay me, transferred the money to my account, advised by his lawyer that a lawsuit would cost even more. However, since he hadn't found a job since being fired, his parents had to cover for him. After hearing about his situation from relatives, they visited my parents' home, apologizing for the trouble Tom caused. After giving up on finding a new job, Tom returned to his hometown under the pretext of helping out with his family's farm. However, the reason for his divorce became common knowledge throughout the village, and people, from little kids to the elderly, would point and laugh at him while he helped in his parents' fields. Ah, there's stingy Uncle Tom. Even with a degree from a prestigious university and a job at a big corporation, he's no good. If his wife leaves him because he's so rotten, the reason for his previous divorce was also his reckless spending. He'll never change. Being ridiculed by the folks in town is infuriating. Remar to show them up. I got so fed up with these persistent messages, but I blocked Tom's contact. His affair partner had already dumped him, as it seems the end of money meant the end of their relationship. I tracked down this affair partner using a private investigator and made sure they paid alimony properly. As for Mike, I made him reimburse the money he had recklessly spent using my credit card. Although he was enrolled in a prestigious university and was on track to follow in his father's footsteps as an elite, his constant skipping of classes to hang out led to him dropping too many credits and being expelled. His friends and girlfriends were concerned, but Mike's arrogant comments out of sheer bravado led to everyone turning their backs on him. Then there was a huge fight with Tom, who said, "You're my son, and you won't even help pay off my debts." Now they're apparently estranged. Mike lives alone in a small apartment, making ends meet with part-time jobs. Unable to freely buy things and having to cut down on living expenses despite having an income, he's subjected to daily sarcasm. But that's all in the past now, and I feel refreshed as my cooking website is doing well, and I'm about to publish a book. I've moved to the top floor of a high-rise condo, which is part of my father's inheritance. My mom is still healthy, but she's already 73. The high-rise is close to my childhood home, so it's perfect for quickly getting to my mom if anything happens. I'm planning a surprise spa trip for her upcoming birthday. Though my marriage was a failure, I want to continue to have a good